It stretched wider than the diameter of Earth's ancient Colosseum, taller than cathedrals that had once pierced the skies of Europe. Its vaulted ceiling shimmered with constellations, real-time projections of the galaxy itself, each star glowing in silent testimony to the countless civilizations bound, for better or worse, by this assembly. Here, the destinies of worlds were decided. Armies ordered into wars with a signature. Economies reshaped with a gesture. Civilizations judged with a vote. For centuries, the council had stood unchallenged. Until now. Every seat in the chamber was occupied. 100 species, some ancient beyond human comprehension, sat coiled, perched, or suspended in their crystalline pods. Their eyes, some insectoid, some glowing, some a cluster of faceted lenses, were all fixed upon the delegation from Earth. The humans were a young species compared to most here. They had earned their place in the council just 87 years prior, when the battered warship Artemis limped out of Sol's gravity well, armed with nothing more than ingenuity and stubbornness, and shocked the stars by surviving what should have annihilated them. Since then, they had clawed their way into relevance, trading, allying, building. And now, at the pinnacle of their hard-won recognition, they threatened to tear it all apart. Ambassador Ilara Miles sat at the dais reserved for Earth. She was composed, her figure illuminated by the pale glow of the council's central light. She was not armored like the admirals behind her, nor draped in regal robes like the Avexi crystal emissary. She wore a simple black suit lined with the insignia of the Terran Alliance, its darkness a statement in itself. Humanity would not adorn itself to appear more than it was. The murmurs of alien tongues rose around her like a storm. Translations shimmered in holographic threads across the chamber, hundreds of voices layered, accusing, demanding. The humans defy unity. They are reckless. They must comply. At the opposing dais, the Korth Dominion speaker rose to his full height. His carapace gleamed obsidian under the chamber's light, his 6 eyes glittering with restrained fury. The Dominion had ruled the outer sectors for millennia, and the tone in his voice was not suggestion but command. You will not walk away from this treaty, humans, his voice resonated, shaking the metal underfoot. The stability of the council depends upon it. Your refusal is not merely insolence, it is rebellion. The chamber trembled with his words. Many nodded in agreement. Some species hissed their disapproval, others beat appendages against their seats in a rhythmic show of contempt. Ambassador Miles did not rise. She simply lifted a hand, palm outward. The chamber fell silent, as though her gesture had pulled the air itself from the room. Her voice, when it came, was calm, deliberate. Every syllable carried. The stability of this council, she said, has never rested upon treaties. It rests upon fear. Fear of the strong deciding for the weak. Fear of ancient empires dictating to the new. And humanity will not bow to fear. A sharp intake of air hissed across the chamber. Crystalline bodies flickered in agitation. Feathery limbs twitched. Tendrils curled in disgust. The Avexi emissary, a being of translucent crystal whose body refracted light like 1,000 tiny prisms, dimmed in sudden disapproval. Such words, arrogance unbecoming of a fledgling world. The Vayari Confederacy's delegates, serpentine beings wrapped in metallic coils, slithered restlessly, their tails scraping against the dais. One of them hissed, "You will doom us all with your defiance." Ambassador Miles finally stood. She was not tall compared to most beings here, but she carried herself with the weight of every world and soul. "You fear doom," she said evenly. "But you fear the wrong thing." The Dominion speaker slammed a claw against the dais, sparks flying. His 6 eyes burned with fury. "Enough riddles. You dare speak as if the Council's authority is an illusion? You dare to challenge order itself? Then hear this, human, if you walk away today, you walk into war. And it will be your kind who pay the price." Every voice in the chamber rose at once, a cacophony of outrage and disbelief. The sound thundered through the chamber, 100 species shouting at once, translations overlapping into chaos. Through it all, the humans did not speak. One by one, as if on cue, they rose from their seats. Admirals in black and silver uniforms. Advisors whose faces were set in grim determination. Officers whose eyes burned with the same fierce fire as their ambassador. Their movements echoed, boots striking the floor in sharp unison. The sound cut through the noise like drumbeats of war. And then, without a word, they turned their backs on the galaxy. The council erupted into pandemonium. Cowards! Arrogance! This is treason! They doom us all! Some shouted threats of embargo, others promises of war. The Dominion speaker's voice roared above them all, "This is humanity's death sentence." The council's supreme moderator, an ancient being of liquid light suspended within a glass sphere, struck the resonance gong. The sound reverberated through the chamber like a quake, rattling every seat, shaking banners from the walls. "Order! Order!" the moderator boomed, his voice layered in 100 languages. "Silence, or I will." But his command was swallowed in the uproar. At the far end of the chamber, the titanic doors sealed shut with a deep, echoing boom. The sound lingered, final and absolute. The humans were gone. For a long moment, the chamber hung in suffocating silence. The holographic stars above shimmered indifferently, as if mocking the chaos below. Every delegate, from the ancient Avexi to the serpentine Veyari, wrestled with the same unspoken question. Why? Why had the humans, so newly risen, so precariously balanced between acceptance and destruction, walked away from the most powerful seat of governance in the galaxy? What did they know that no one else did? In that silence, the council realized something chilling. Humanity was no longer pleading for recognition. No longer seeking approval. No longer afraid. They had made a choice, and the galaxy would feel its consequences. The silence before the storm had ended. And far beyond the council chamber, the first rumblings of chaos stirred in the void. The walkout shattered the galaxy like a thunderclap. Within hours, footage of the humans' departure was streaming across every comnet. Millions of systems replayed the moment, the Terran delegation rising in silence, the steady drumbeat of boots on the chamber floor, the echo of the council doors sealing behind them. To some, it was the sound of betrayal. To others, it was the sound of hope. The galaxy had seen rebellions before. Civilizations had defied the council in the past, most had been crushed within cycles. Yet this was different. Humanity had not stormed out with fire and fury. They had not screamed, threatened, or begged. They had left with something far more dangerous. Conviction. The chaos spread like cracks through glass. In the glittering spire worlds of the Avexi, broadcasts flared with condemnation. Crystal-bodied anchors pulsed in warning tones. Humanity has destabilized the foundation of interstellar order. Their arrogance will bring ruin. Markets fluctuated. Entire sectors froze trade with human colonies within a day. In the shadowed fleets of the Korth Dominion, war drums pounded. Their generals gathered in war rooms carved from obsidian, walls alive with tactical displays. The Dominion's high warlord bared his serrated teeth and hissed, "Strike before the infection spreads. Crush the humans before the young races believe defiance is strength." And in the coiling towers of the Veyari Confederacy, debate slithered through endless chambers. Their serpentine leaders feared something greater than human defiance, they feared human example. Already, smaller civilizations whispered among themselves, "If Earth can stand against them, why not us?" The council chamber's chaos had become the galaxy's. But in soul, humanity did not panic. They prepared. Earth's orbital defense spire hung above the planet like a silent sentinel, its blackened surface gleaming under Sol's golden light. Stretching thousands of meters, it was both fortress and nerve center, from which the Terran Alliance coordinated its fleets. Inside, the command dome was a cathedral of glass and steel, overlooking the curve of Earth itself, clouds drifting lazily across oceans, continents lit by the pulse of cities. It was a reminder of what was at stake. Ambassador Ilara Miles stood at the window, her reflection ghosted against the planet. She had not spoken to the press. She had not addressed the Alliance Assembly. Since leaving the Council, she had spoken only to those who needed to know. Behind her, footsteps rang against the polished floor. Admiral Juno Reyes approached, her uniform dark as midnight, her shoulders squared with the weight of command. "Ambassador," Reyes said, her voice clipped, efficient. "You've seen the reports. The Dominion has mobilized 2 armadas along the Perseus corridor. The Confederacy is moving to cut our supply lines. The Council has branded us destabilizers. War is coming." Ilara did not turn. "I know." Reyes studied her for a long moment. The silence pressed heavy in the dome, broken only by the faint hum of the spire's systems. Finally, she spoke again, softer. "You realize, they don't understand why we left. They don't need to understand." Ilara's eyes remained fixed on Earth. "Not yet." Reyes frowned. "Then tell me, at least. I've fought for Earth my whole life, but I've never seen us take a gamble this dangerous. What truth is worth defying the galaxy?" Slowly, Ilara turned. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, locked on the Admiral's. "Because the Council is compromised." Reyes blinked. "Compromised? They aren't fighting over treaties, Juno," Ilara said. "That's theater. They're hiding something. Something ancient. We found evidence buried in the ruins on Proxima's third moon. Records of a war so old it predates the Council itself. Records of a species erased from history." The Admiral stiffened. "The architects." Ilara's voice dropped lower, as if speaking the name itself carried risk. "The Council pretends they're a myth. But they were real. And every trace we uncovered points to one truth: humanity was never supposed to exist." For a moment, the dome felt colder. Even the stars beyond seemed distant, unreachable. Reyes exhaled slowly. "You're saying the Council knew?" Ilara nodded. "They knew. They've always known. That's why they sought to bind us. The treaties, the demands, the veiled threats, they weren't about balance. They were about control. They wanted to keep us leashed until it was too late." Reyes' fists clenched. "And by walking out, we've told them we won't wear the leash." "Yes." Ilara's gaze returned to Earth below. "And in doing so, we've drawn the storm to us." Outside the spire, the fleets of humanity gathered. Dreadnoughts hung like mountains in the void, their armored hulls glinting with starlight. Carriers brimmed with squadrons of strike craft, engines flaring like restless comets. Frigates and destroyers swarmed in disciplined formations, their weapons primed, shields charged. The Aegis Eternal, Earth's flagship, loomed at the center of the armada, a behemoth of steel and resolve, its prow etched with the insignia of the Terran Alliance. To the galaxy, these ships had seemed crude, inelegant compared to the sleek vessels of the elder species. But they were built with a philosophy alien to most civilizations: adaptability. Every plate, every weapon, every system was designed to be repaired, replaced, or reinvented under fire. Where others designed for perfection, humanity designed for survival. And survival had made them dangerous. But beyond the borders of Sol, in the deep void between stars, the storm was gathering. Council fleets moved into position, their banners of authority carried on beams of light across the stars. Dominion war cruisers, bristling with weapons, darkened the trade routes. Confederacy blockades tightened around human colonies. Smaller species were forced to choose, side with the Council or risk their own survival. And in shadowed corners of the galaxy, whispers spread of strange signals. Fleets of unknown origin stirring at the rim. The architects. Most dismissed the rumors as fearmongering. The council silenced every whisper with assurances, they are myths. Humanity is spreading lies to justify rebellion. But those who had seen the Proxima ruins, those who had read the records, knew better. In the command dome, Elara stood unmoving as reports streamed in, mobilizations, declarations, accusations. War drums echoed louder with every hour. Admiral Reyes turned from the displays. If the Dominion strikes first, we'll hold them. We've trained for this. But if the Confederacy joins, they will, Elara said quietly. Reyes' jaw tightened. Then it will be war on every front. Elara finally turned from the window, her voice steady, resolute. So be it. Humanity has walked into storms before. And every time, we have come out the other side. This will be no different. The Admiral's eyes searched hers, seeking doubt, finding none. She gave a short nod. In the silence that followed, the stars beyond the dome seemed to flicker, as if the galaxy itself were holding its breath. The Council believed humanity had doomed itself with arrogance. But the truth was far more dangerous. Humanity had seen the storm coming long before anyone else. And they were preparing not just to endure it, but to meet it head-on. The council chamber was hollow without the humans. Where once their defiance had echoed, now only fear lingered. Delegates filled the great hall, their voices sharp with panic. The Korth Dominion demanded an immediate strike against Earth. The Vayari hissed of embargoes and sieges. The Avexi Confederacy pulsed dim warnings of severing all ties. Smaller species squirmed in their seats, afraid to choose sides. The Supreme Moderator struck the resonance gong again and again, but even the thunder of its sound could not bring order. And then, amid the uproar, the first reports arrived. Signals from the rim. Fleets emerging from dark space. Ships older than the Council itself, their silhouettes vast, angular, terrifying in their precision. The architects. The name rippled through the chamber like a death knell. For centuries they had been myth, erased from the archives, whispered of only in forbidden texts. But the signals could not be denied. Images filled the chamber, ships the size of continents, dark and radiant at once, gliding through the void with unstoppable purpose. At first, the delegates refused to believe. Then the screaming reports came in, planets falling in hours, fleets annihilated without resistance, colonies burned to glass. The council chamber erupted in terror. Across the stars, the architects descended. Their vessels moved with an ancient inevitability. Where Dominion fleets rose to meet them, they were scythed down like grass before a storm. Where Confederacy defenses bristled, their bastions cracked and burned. No plea, no negotiation, no mercy. Only annihilation. The Dominion's pride, fleets that had ruled sectors for millennia, crumbled in a single night. Confederacy strongholds, cities that had never fallen, became fire and ruin. Smaller civilizations fled in chaos, their ships scattering like startled prey. The galaxy's order, which had endured for centuries, unraveled in days. And then, at the heart of Sol, humanity rose. The human fleets burned against the void like 1,000 sparks. Carriers unleashed waves of strike craft, frigates darted through black space like hunting wolves, and dreadnoughts loomed with weapons glowing white-hot. At the center of it all, the Aegis Eternal surged forward, Earth's flagship, its prow etched with the names of lost battles, its hull a monument to survival. On its bridge, Ambassador Elara Miles stood beside Admiral Juno Reyes. The chamber around them trembled with readiness. Officers shouted coordinates, gunners armed weapons, pilots confirmed launch orders. And through the transparent viewport, the first architect warship filled the void like a horizon made of steel and shadow. Elara opened a channel. Her face appeared across the Council's fractured networks, broadcast not only to the chamber she had once walked out of, but to every listening world. You asked why we left, she said, her voice cold and clear as the void. Behind her, stars burned and fleets moved like living fire. You asked why we defied your treaties. This is why. Because we knew. The architects are not myth. They have returned. And the council you trusted hid the truth. A pause. Her eyes hardened, her voice sharpened. But humanity does not fear them. We were not born in safety. We were not raised in peace. We were forged in storms, on a world that tried to kill us at every turn, in histories written with fire and blood. You feared this day. But we, her gaze burned with unshakable fire, we were born for it. The broadcast cut. The Aegis Eternal's guns lit the dark. The first clash shook the galaxy. Architect warships were monstrous things, their hulls layered with alien geometries that bent light, their weapons tearing through space itself. Where they fired, ships ceased to exist, shattered into nothingness. But humanity did not fight like the Council. Their fleets adapted. Strike craft swarmed like hornets, sacrificing themselves to map weak points. Frigates darted under the shadows of giants, targeting joints and seams with missiles designed to tear apart armored worlds. Dreadnoughts unleashed weapons of desperate ingenuity, coil guns that hurled tungsten slugs at relativistic speeds, plasma lances that burned like newborn stars. Every human loss was avenged threefold. Where Dominion fleets had broken, human formations bent and snapped back. Where Confederacy bastions had crumbled, human defenses absorbed the storm and struck from the chaos. For every architect vessel that burned, a flicker of hope spread. Civilizations watching from afar saw what the ancients had not, that humanity's refusal to bow had not been arrogance, it had been preparation. In the council chamber, delegates stared at the broadcasts in stunned silence. They watched as human fleets, once dismissed as crude, tore into enemies that no elder species had ever dared face. They saw ships rebuilt mid-battle, soldiers fighting even when torn from the void, captains sacrificing themselves without hesitation. And they realized, with a slow, chilling certainty, that humanity was doing what none of them could. They were saving the galaxy. The battle raged for days. Worlds were lost, but others were saved. For every architect strike that annihilated, humanity countered with unrelenting defiance. At last, the architect flagship emerged from the dark, a colossal construct, larger than moons, its surface crawling with impossible architecture, its weapons flaring with the power of dying stars. It moved toward Sol with inevitability, as if the destruction of humanity was written into the fabric of history. On the bridge of the Aegis Eternal, silence reigned. Admiral Reyes' jaw was set. That thing is larger than our entire fleet combined. Ilara stared into the abyss. Then we fight harder. Orders echoed. Fleets converged. Weapons charged. Humanity's armada flung itself at the impossible. The void became fire. Missiles streaked like falling stars. Plasma lances carved burning scars across alien hull. The Aegis Eternal drove forward, every cannon roaring, shields collapsing and flaring again under repair. Dozens of ships were lost. Hundreds of thousands gave their lives. But inch by inch, the impossible began to break. And then, with one final strike, a lance of energy driven into the heart of the architect flagship, the Colossus erupted. The explosion lit the void brighter than a sun. Fragments of alien geometry spiraled into the abyss, burning, collapsing, vanishing. The architects were gone. Across the galaxy, silence reigned. Civilizations that had braced for annihilation stared in awe at the impossible, the fall of gods. The council chamber, once filled with shouts of condemnation, was hushed as the transmission replayed again and again, the moment humanity had turned the tide. In that silence, something shifted. For the first time in centuries, the council was no longer the unquestioned center of power. That mantle had passed to the species they had mocked, restrained, and underestimated. When the council finally convened again, Ambassador Ilara Miles returned. She walked into the same chamber she had abandoned, her presence no longer dismissed but awaited with hushed anticipation. She did not bow. She did not plead. She stood at the center, her gaze sweeping across the silent delegates. "The age of silence is over," she said. Her voice carried not just through the chamber, but through every channel, every system, every listening world. The council can no longer decide the fate of all. The galaxy will stand together, or it will fall apart. Humanity will not walk out again. This time, she paused, the fire in her voice unshakable. We will lead. For a heartbeat, silence. And then, slowly, the chamber rose, not in outrage, not in chaos, but in thunderous accord. The galaxy had been shaken, burned, and remade. And at its heart, humanity stood unbowed. The walkout had not been the end. It had been the beginning.